January 26, 1991. Southern Iraq. It's 2:38 a.m. The desert is black and cold, the kind of cold that cuts through steel. Sand drifts across armored hulls as Abrams tanks of the 1st Infantry Division idle in silence, their engines rumbling low like restrained thunder. Through thermal sights, American gunners scan a horizon that glows in a ghostly green. Then, the order comes. Across the border, Iraqi radar stations blink, artillery crews scramble. Republican Guard units dig deeper into their berms. They believe the main assault will come from the sea, from the south, from Kuwait. They are wrong. A wall of armored steel begins to move west of Kuwait's defensive lines, an enormous left hook sweeping through the open desert. The largest armored maneuver since World War II has begun. Inside a command post lit by red lamps, General Norman Schwarzkopf studies his maps. He has bet everything on speed and surprise. If Iraqi forces detect the flanking maneuver too soon, if the Guard pivots and counters, tens of thousands could die in a grinding mechanized slaughter. If the weather shifts, satellites fail, or logistics falter, the desert will swallow the coalition whole. 4 days later, it will be over. 100 hours of ground combat that will shatter the Iraqi army and redraw the balance of power in the Middle East. But the question that still echoes across that silent battlefield is this: why did the world's fourth largest army collapse so quickly? This is the story of the Gulf War. In the summer of 1990, the world stood at an inflection point. The Cold War was ending. The Berlin Wall had fallen. The Soviet Union was fracturing. For decades, global tension had been structured, predictable, restrained by mutual nuclear terror. Then suddenly, the structure dissolved. In Baghdad, Saddam Hussein saw an opportunity. Iraq had just emerged from a brutal 8-year war with Iran that consumed nearly 1 million lives and left the country financially shattered. Saddam owed tens of billions to neighboring Arab states, especially Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Oil prices were falling, and Iraq's reconstruction stalled. Debt strangled the regime. Saddam accused Kuwait of overproducing oil, driving down prices and sabotaging Iraq's recovery. He accused them of slant drilling into Iraqi oil fields. Publicly he framed it as economic warfare. Privately he saw something more, a chance to dominate the Gulf. On August 2, 1990, Iraqi forces invaded Kuwait. Within 48 hours, Kuwait City fell. The Iraqi army, battle-hardened from years against Iran, rolled through with speed and brutality. Kuwaiti resistance collapsed. The ruling family fled. Saddam declared Kuwait Iraq's 19th province. The move stunned the world. If Iraq absorbed Kuwait, Saddam would control nearly 20% of the world's oil reserves. Saudi Arabia would be next. The global economy, still fragile, could be held hostage. In Washington, President George H.W. Bush saw more than a regional dispute. He saw a test of the post-Cold War order. If naked aggression went unanswered, what message would it send? The United Nations moved quickly. Sanctions were imposed. Diplomatic pressure mounted. But Saddam did not retreat. Instead he fortified. Iraqi forces dug trench lines across Kuwait. They laid mines by the thousands. They positioned artillery, anti-aircraft batteries, and armored divisions in layered defensive belts. Nearly 500,000 Iraqi troops occupied Kuwait and southern Iraq. Among them the Republican Guard, elite, politically loyal, heavily armed, was, on paper, the 4th largest army in the world. To push them out would require an extraordinary coalition, and an even bolder strategy. George H.W. Bush was a cautious, methodical leader, shaped by war and diplomacy. A former Navy pilot shot down in World War II, former CIA director, ambassador, and vice president. He understood alliances. He assembled one of the largest military coalitions in modern history, 35 nations, including Britain, France, Egypt, and Syria. Even the Soviet Union offered muted cooperation. Saudi Arabia opened its territory for staging. Operation Desert Shield began. Over the next 5 months, American cargo planes crossed the Atlantic in an endless stream. Troops poured into the desert. Tanks arrived by ship. General Norman Schwarzkopf, commander of U.S. Central Command, was blunt, intense, and believed in overwhelming force. His counterpart in Baghdad was Saddam Hussein, calculating, paranoid, steeped in brutality. Saddam believed the coalition would fracture. He believed Americans lacked the stomach for high casualties. Most dangerously, he believed his army could withstand modern Western air power. He was about to learn otherwise. On January 17, 1991, the air war began. At 2:38 a.m., stealth fighters crossed into Iraqi airspace. Cruise missiles struck command bunkers in Baghdad. Radar installations vanished in fire. Within hours, coalition aircraft achieved air superiority. For 38 days, the sky belonged to the coalition. Precision-guided munitions destroyed bridges, supply depots, and communications hubs. Iraqi units were isolated. Fuel convoys burned. Morale began to crack. But air power alone could not liberate Kuwait. The ground war would decide everything. And Schwarzkopf had a plan that relied on deception. While Marines prepared for a frontal assault into Kuwait, massive armored corps secretly shifted west into the Saudi desert. The left hook would swing wide, bypass fortified lines, and strike the Iraqi rear. It required perfect coordination and secrecy. And it required Saddam to believe the main attack would come directly into Kuwait. Coalition naval forces staged visible amphibious rehearsals in the Gulf. Radio traffic was manipulated. Intelligence leaks were fed deliberately. Iraqi commanders reinforced coastal defenses. They never saw the hammer forming in the west. February 24, 1991. 4 a.m. coalition artillery erupted. Marines advanced into Kuwait, breaching minefields under fire. Iraqi soldiers, exhausted from weeks of bombing, surrendered in clusters. Some walked toward American lines waving white cloth. Others fought briefly then retreated. Simultaneously, the U.S. the 7th Corps and the 18th Airborne Corps surged north and east across the open desert, hundreds of tanks in line formation, Bradley fighting vehicles advancing at full throttle, Apache helicopters hunting armor ahead. The speed was staggering. Iraqi units, cut off from reliable communication, struggled to understand what was happening. Reports conflicted. Some believed it was a feint. It was not. On February 26, near a featureless stretch known as the 73 Easting, American cavalry units collided with elements of the Republican Guard. A sandstorm reduced visibility to near zero. Thermal sights pierced the haze. At ranges where Iraqi tanks could not even see their enemy, American M1A1 Abrams opened fire. One shot, one kill. Again, dozens of Iraqi tanks destroyed in minutes. The engagement lasted less than an hour. It was mechanized warfare at a technological asymmetry rarely seen in history. Elsewhere, British armored units tore through Iraqi positions. French forces secured the western flank. Airborne troops blocked escape routes. By the third day, Iraqi formations were disintegrating. Retreat turned to rout. On the highway from Kuwait City to Basra, columns of Iraqi vehicles attempted withdrawal. Coalition aircraft struck relentlessly. The road became a graveyard of twisted metal and smoke, later called the Highway of Death. On February 28, after just 100 hours of ground combat, President Bush declared a ceasefire. Kuwait was liberated. The Iraqi army had been shattered. Coalition casualties were astonishingly low, fewer than 300 killed in action. Iraqi losses were catastrophic, with estimates ranging from 20,000 to 35,000 killed and tens of thousands captured. The disparity stunned military analysts worldwide. But victory carried complexity. Saddam remained in power. In the war's aftermath, uprisings erupted among Shiite populations in southern Iraq and Kurdish groups in the north. Encouraged by perceived American support, they rose against the regime. The coalition did not intervene. Saddam crushed the rebellions with brutality. Sanctions tightened, no-fly zones were established. Iraq remained contained but unstable. The decision not to march to Baghdad remains one of the war's most debated moments. Schwarzkopf's mission was clear: liberate Kuwait, not topple the regime. Expanding the war risked fracturing the coalition. Arab states had joined to reverse aggression, not to occupy Iraq. Strategically, the restraint preserved alliance unity. Politically, it left unfinished business. The critical mistake of the Gulf War belonged primarily to Saddam Hussein. He misread the post-Cold War world. He believed the United States would not assemble a coalition. He believed air power would be limited. He believed his army's size guaranteed endurance. But numbers mean little without logistics, morale, and technological parity. Iraqi forces were brave in places, but years of authoritarian control had hollowed initiative from the officer corps. When communications collapsed, units froze. Meanwhile, coalition doctrine emphasized a centralized command, rapid maneuver, and combined arms integration. Technology amplified doctrine, night vision, GPS, precision munitions, real-time intelligence. The battlefield was no longer symmetrical. The Gulf War marked the arrival of a new era, the age of networked warfare. For American audiences, it appeared almost clinical, clean, precise, swift. The war cemented the United States as the sole superpower of the post-Cold War world. It also planted seeds. American troops remained stationed in Saudi Arabia, a presence that would fuel resentment among extremist groups. sanctions devastated Iraqi civilians throughout the 1990s, and the unresolved status of Saddam Hussein would resurface in 2003, leading to a far longer and more complicated conflict. Future adversaries studied the war closely, not to replicate Iraq's mistakes, but to avoid fighting on America's terms, and so the image remains: a silent desert, burned-out tanks half buried in sand, tracks stretching toward a horizon that once trembled with the largest armored assault of its time. 100 hours, a campaign that ended almost as soon as it began. But wars are never measured only in hours. They are measured in consequences. And in the shadow of that swift victory lies a question that history still wrestles with. Was the Gulf War the demonstration of a new American century, or the opening chapter of conflicts that would define it? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into modern history.